During the Christmas holiday period, I took a few days off social media completely. I turned off notifications too. And yeah, I did love it. I personally have a bit of a love-hate relationship with social media. What I found fascinating with that experience, albeit it was only about 3 days, social media tried to contact me, though. I got lots of emails trying to pull me back in from the social media platforms that I've never even received an email from before when I was on them. Wow, that made me stop and just sort of ponder that experience. I didn't want to go back on, but there are some benefits for me when it comes to social media and the other work that I do. What about you? Have you had a similar experience? It seems like a lot of people are taking a break from social media, particularly after the past year. So what are some of the benefits of a digital detox? Well, I reckon there'll be a few you can think of off the top of your head. But let's talk about it a little bit more. We're joined by Dr. Brad Ridout, who is a Senior Research Fellow in Biomedical Informatics and Digital Health at Sydney University. Good evening to you. I ran out of breath there for a second. Brad, welcome to Weekend Evenings.
Hi, Serene. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start by asking you, do you spend a lot of time on your phone and on platforms and social media and the like?
Oh, yes, and I guess the question is, how often do I spend a lot of time? Because it does seem to vary, and Christmas is a time where, thankfully, just with all the busyness and festivities that go on, I've found that I've actually been using it less myself without even trying, which has been a nice silver lining to all the busyness. But yeah, it's something that, like everyone, it is, as you said, very much a love-hate relationship. It's something we can't do without, but it's something that, we do feel like throwing out the window at times as well. So
what would happen if collectively everyone just stopped? That's it. We were off social media. We did it. Like if you were to just stop and think about that world.
That is a very, I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle. I think it's here to stay, and it's hopefully we can get better at using it and incorporating it into a healthy part of our life rather than something that at times can become all consuming.
Yes. So for you, it wasn't an experience you just talked to. That wasn't a sort of a resolution or anything. You were just saying that was something that you just found that you were doing. You were spending less time on it.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, having 3 young children at home on school holidays helps a lot as well, because there's just not a lot of time to get the screen out. But yeah, it is something that in the past I've made New Year's resolutions about. One of the best things I ever did was turning the push notifications for my email off.
For your email.
I didn't even realise that was an option at first.
Neither did I.
Yeah, you just, the little vibrations you get all day long with emails popping in, and, they're very rarely actually worth your time and worth pulling out your phone to check. So
absolutely, it's a matter of
those off. Now I decide when I check my email, I go in and refresh it when I want to, see the emails come in and go, okay, save that for later or read them if they're urgent.
Yes.
Yes, I found that was, one of the best things that I've found that has been life-changing in terms of the amount of times I reach into the pocket to get my phone out.
Well, there you go. That's a tip there in and of itself, which talks to what I was sort of mentioning in my introduction, where I switched off notifications in terms of my phone notifications, but I didn't do that for my email, because for me, I kind of left my email going. Well, I didn't know you could do it like you. I didn't know that you could switch off email notifications for social media platforms. And like I mentioned, I was getting emails from I've never got an email from Instagram in my life. This is how pitched I'm going because high pitched I'm going because I couldn't believe it. But I was getting, and like you said, they were nonsensical. It's a matter of, jump on and check out so-and-so who's added to their stories. That's it.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show how effective notifications are, because it's not until you turn them off that they started to, realise that they weren't able to reach you. They weren't able to draw you into that vortex.
That's right. That's right.
That's so a very good tip.
And I think it's And I think you're right. I think it's potentially a bit of a two-way street. You know, we were talking a little bit just a couple of minutes ago on this love-hate relationship. And that hate part is because of things like this, you know, getting emails telling you to come back on for no particular reason. So I think there can be, I don't know, will they ever stop doing these sorts of things if we're sort of going to try and get a little bit better at this so that we don't...
Well, they did introduce, well, actually it was the phone companies themselves, so Apple and Android, Samsung, that introduced the screen time kind of checking.
Oh, that's right.
The phone on your phone.
God.
How long you've been spending on your phone. You get a little notification once a week if you've got it turned on telling you.
Yeah, but even having that annoys me.
A day you've spent.
But the fact that exists annoys me. I'm like, no, I don't need a phone. I don't need my phone to tell me about this. I need to. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So the difference there is the phone companies, they're not dependent on you being on social media.
That's right.
You know, that you've got a phone, you need a phone, everyone needs a phone. They've already sold you the phone, that's fine. They don't rely on the advertising that Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the other social media giants, that's their income. Their income is your time.
Yeah.
So they need to get as much of your time as possible. And yeah, they do. They use the same tricks that the pokies use. You know, they give you those intermittent rewards where you don't know what you're going to get, and you know you get a little hit of dopamine every time you get a like, comment, or you know, a notification you've been waiting for. And yeah, it's, it can be very, very hard to take care of just through sheer willpower, which I guess is why a lot of people are drawn to the idea of the digital detox. Fair enough.
Can we get into just some tips that you know, people might not be really aware of? So when I think of, okay, what are some tips we can do to put our phones down? There are some obvious ones that come to mind. Put them down. Don't pick them up. And then maybe something as simple as, I know I do this at night sometimes, although I have been bitten a little bit. I live in a double-story house. I'll put my phone upstairs and I'll be downstairs hanging out, chilling out.
Yep.
So it's out of reach. But then the world of Chromecast came in and casting from my phone to my TV, so, which meant I needed to bring the phone a little bit closer. But I'll at least move it away. So there are things like that. But what you were talking about earlier in terms of being able to turn off email notifications, that's pretty cool. So tell us a bit about some tips we can do to put our phones down, Brad.
Yeah. So I think the idea of the digital detox itself, I think taking a break from social media and, you know, taking stock of, you know, the fast-paced and hyper-connected way that we live our life can be good for some people, but it's not for everyone. And a lot of people rely on social media for their jobs and just for communicating, especially at the moment during the pandemic when, you know, people aren't able to see each other face-to-face as much. So, you know, that can be good, but, you know, it's also a bit like a juice cleanse. There's no point you know, fasting and getting something out of your system if you're just going to go back to binging afterwards. So I think it's really important to instead focus on thinking about your relationship with your device and social media. So I do recommend those screen time functions of your phone that tell you how much you've been using it. As frustrating as it might be,
oh, that's just me personally.
It's the first step. It's like the first step of AA. It's admitting that you have a problem. And it's actually informative in that it tells you...
You're not wrong there in the admitting that you have a problem. You're kind of not far off there, because I've spoken with close friends and family members, and even sort of personally in my sort of inner circle. And, you know, if we're talking just potentially about our partners or some family relatives, there is almost kind of this feeling and sense that we're kind of not, you know, we're finding that our close partners aren't necessarily owning up to the fact that, hey, you know, you are spending a bit of time on that. And then when you bring it up, you get defensive. So you're not far off, Brad.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I'm a psychologist, I'm a scientist, I'm all about the data. So look at your data and see how your time is being spent. Are you spending it productively? Because a lot of people do a lot of their work from their phone, and you might find that, you know, you're spending 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day on your phone, but when you look at it, most of it is productive. Or you might find that 3 hours out of that 4 is on Facebook. You might be quite shocked at that and realise that, you know, you've been sucked into the vortex of the infinite scroll. And the thing about social media, you can never read it all. There's always something else that might grab your interest.
That's the rabbit hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
but that's a good point you've pointed out there, in terms of, you know, yes, there is a lot of work that is potentially getting done. I think about my line of work and the work that I'm doing when it comes to even the way I work with my producer and the way that we prepare for this show. We don't do that in the office, in the studio. We do that away from that and on our devices. And so, and I also think about, and that's connected directly to my 7-year-old child, and something that I used with her, but then I found just also applies even with other grown-ups around me, is that if I am picking up my device, I'm actually calling out and saying what I'm doing. So I'll do that with my 7-year-old. Look, I'm just going to text Dad to let him know to grab XYZ on the phone, because for my daughter, she can't differentiate. She just will potentially see that as, oh, Mum's just always on her phone.
Exactly. And you'll find that when your kids get to teenage ages, they're going to be frustrated as well, because they have to do a lot of their homework on their laptops and their devices. And, you know, and that's where asking the question, you know, that has been debated by existence as a cyber psychologist, what is a sensible amount of screen time? The answer is that's the wrong question to ask.
Okay.
It's about how are you using it, and are you using it mindfully? Are you using it for, you know, it's a tool, and it's all about what you're doing on there. If you're wasting time scrolling social media, and that's the thing, social media isn't always a waste of time. A lot of people get a lot of really good value out of connecting with communities across that social media allows for. So I think, getting back to tips, I think something that's definitely worth doing is a digital declutter. So go through and look at all the things you follow in your feed and have a think about whether they're adding value to your life or whether they're detracting from it. Are you following people that, you know, are a bit phony and kind of make you feel bad about your life? And, you know, is it really worth having them in there? You do have the power to unfollow those people or those pages, or even the news. Like, you know, there's been, you know, the word of the year last year was doom scrolling, which is something 2020 definitely fostered in the world. It's just, you know, you can get obsessed with all the news that's coming at you because it's affecting us all. But yeah, there has to be a point where you go, is this really helping me, or am I just wasting time and making myself feel bad?
If you've just joined us, you're with me, Serene Damaki, on ABC Radio's Weekend Evenings across the country, and I'm joined by Dr. Brad Ridout, who is a Senior Research Fellow in Biomedical Informatics and Digital Health at Sydney University, and we are talking about digital detoxing, digital decluttering, just kind of being mindful of how you're using your digital time, be it on social media or if it is or isn't productive. And Brad, just on that, in terms of when you were talking about that question to ask, as opposed to asking, you know, how long should I be spending? It's more about, well, how am I using it? Could you also tack on to not only how I'm using it, but when I'm using it? And I raise this because I was conscious of this just today. So I mentioned earlier that in working with my producer, we prep and we use our devices to prep for the show. And I was in the car with my family when I kind of picked up my device and started working when I really didn't have to do it at that time. It could have waited.
Yeah, that's it. It's just, you know, phones have changed our lives in putting things at our fingertips at any time. Like whoever, you know, people don't wonder about things. They don't wait until they get home. They don't go, if there's a question that needs to be answered, the answer's in your pocket. You Google it. So it really is, you know, they're there to give us instant gratification anytime we want. And sometimes when you do have short little work tasks like that, it is easier to just do them at the time.
Yes.
You know, And that's where, it's especially when you're surrounded with your family, that's something that, can be a point of contention, especially for young people as well. Who,
Absolutely.
Might see the double standards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can relate to that. So what, from a professional perspective, where we're not about, where it's, we're moving away from presenteeism and being in an office where a computer is at the office and we come home and there's literally nothing, we cannot work from home because there's no option to work from home. So does that mean that 3-day reply rule is now out the window? Like, it just doesn't exist anymore? You'd get an email and unless it was, there's important and there's urgent, but, I've got about 3 days to kind of get back to you. It's all right, chill.
Yeah, exactly. And we're seeing now people are actually in their email signature putting things like, I work flexible hours and, I may email you out of hours, but I don't expect you to get back to me within those hours, or something along those lines, or to say that, I will get back to you within 48 hours because blah, blah, blah. So it's, we are getting more accepting of that, I think, and some industries are better at it than others. But, I think that, that's one thing that the other downside is the work creep into non-work hours. And, just getting back to tips once again, having a digital curfew is really important, because I think one of the biggest ways that smartphones can impact on people's well-being is on their sleep, because it's not only distracting you and maybe keeping your brain wired for longer. The blue light that your phone emits actually inhibits the melatonin that helps you get to sleep. So, having a curfew where you go, okay, if you've got a family and everyone's kind of struggling with it, it's good to have a place in the home where everyone puts their phone at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever time you decide, and that's it. It's for the evening, unless the phone actually rings. People do actually use phones for phone calls every now and then. You, have a curfew, and it's, it will definitely help with sleep. And the other side of the coin, how many of us, when they get up, the first thing you reach for is your phone. People keep it next to their bed, often charging at night. And, if you wake up in the middle of the night, I've been guilty of just, I wonder what's happening in the news. There's, it's daytime in the US. What's the news happening in the US right now? And, you can go down a rabbit hole at the most ungodly hour. So, it's one of those things where you can get into a better morning routine where you start off with a brief meditation or something else other than checking your phone. You'll find that you're easing into the day, less flummoxed than you would be if you just open up your phone and suddenly bombard your brain with information that it's just not ready for at that hour.
And I wonder about, what about young people and teens? So they're of this technological generation, whereas I'm not, Brad. So I come into it with all this. I come into it with the skepticism and the, because it's not of my generation. Yeah. If we think about young people and teens who are of this generation when it comes to smartphones and technology, are they more susceptible to feeling lower if they use social media too much, or is there somewhat of a built-in, not immunity, but something where they'll just manage it better than maybe my generation and an older generation is? Nah.
I'm not sure if they'll manage it better, but they may not realise that it's a problem.
Okay.
I think young people are a lot more mature than we often give them credit for, but their brains are not fully developed until the mid-20s. So the impulse control part of the brain, which is something that, social media really plays on, is something that they're not going to be as good at. So I think if you can acknowledge that, technology ruling our life is something that is a problem for everyone in the family, you can try and maybe set some rules together rather than, being a top-down imposed by the parents, which, the kids haven't had any say in, and also, might feel like, oh, no, you don't understand, I need this. And to a degree, that they do need it more, because so much more of their socialising, especially in the last 12 months, is done online, and that's just a way of life for them, but that doesn't mean that needs to come at the expense of, face-to-face time with the family. So I think if there can be some, some...
And I think it's how you shape the conversation as well, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. See it as not, it's not punitive. It's something that is good for everyone and something that can be negotiated among people in the family. And if you set the rules together, then everybody abides by them. And that's, I think kids respond well to respect in this area. So, it's easier.
Make them feel like they're in a bit of control.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, look, I'm not sure about this one. There's evidence that smartphones can shorten our lifespan by raising our cortisol. Could you maybe elaborate on that one for me, Brad?
Yes. I actually wrote a piece on this for the conversation about a year ago. Okay. So cortisol is the hormone that primes us for a battle, basically.
Okay.
So it lowers our immunity because it kind of diverts attention away from your immunity to your fight or flight reflexes. So theoretically, yes, it could. If you are constantly having raised cortisol during the day from using your phone, which is something that could happen for people because
that feeling of wanting to go into battle.
It's a source of anxiety for a lot of people.
Okay.
So the way in which it could shorten your life is obviously if you're constantly lowering your immunity through high cortisol, you're going to be more susceptible to sickness and diseases, and any physical health problem you have, you will obviously fare worse if your immunity is low. So that's the theoretical understanding of how that kind of headline grabbing statement was made. But in terms of evidence, there isn't a lot there. There's been some studies that have showed that if people use their smartphones a lot during the day and into the night, it can affect the way your cortisol behaves first thing in the morning. So in a typical, normal human being, we get a cortisol boost about half an hour after we wake up.
Right.
So the body eases into the day, and then you'll find about half an hour after you wake up, you're fully awake. And
alert.
Alert, ready to go.
Mm.
And the fact that, smartphones can delay that natural boost of cortisol that comes at that time, it can delay it. But in terms of cortisol patterns throughout the day, which go up and down in the course of a normal day anyway, there hasn't been any evidence yet to say that smartphones are doing that. But at the same time, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence. People feel better when they spend less time on their phones, and, that shouldn't be ignored. It's something that can impact your well-being, and it's about unpacking how you use it and how that's impacting your well-being. Because, as we say, a phone is just an inanimate object. It's about what you're doing on it, and really unpacking that to work out, whether there are better ways that you could be using it, better, little things you can put in the way, like turning off notifications, as we said, out of sight, out of mind, having a curfew, all those things that can help you use it less until you get into a good habit yourself. And, you maybe don't need to be as hard and fast about some of those rules.
Oh, perfect. Perfect to end on tips. Love it. Brad, thank you so much for your time, for your insights, and of course for your tips as well. It's much appreciated.
No worries. Thanks, Lorraine.
Thank you. That was Dr. Brad Ridout, a Senior Research Fellow in Biomedical Informatics. Why do I always struggle on that word? Informatics. Sounds weird. Anywho, and where was I? Digital health at the Faculty of Medicine and Health at Sydney University.